We'll go ahead and start with this OIS briefing. As you know, we've had 3 officer-involved shootings in the past month or so. This is the one from May 10th that we're going to go over. The other 2, we just had our chief's briefing recently, so we'll get back with you guys on that maybe within the week or so. With that, I'll turn it over to Chief Medina.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here today. We're going to be doing a briefing on one of our officer-involved shootings from earlier in May. And like Gilbert stated, there is 2 other officer-involved shootings that we'll be giving briefings on in the near future. But this one happened May 10th in the area of 5700 Kathryn Southeast. And we will turn it over to who's doing it, Kyle? Yeah. Kyle.
Sorry. My name is Commander Kyle Hartsock. I'm with the Investigations Bureau with the Albuquerque Police Department. This critical incident community briefing will provide information about a male who was shooting a gun in a residential neighborhood and upon police arriving, fired the gun at officers, which resulted in an officer-involved shooting. You're about to see relevant video footage, photos, and learn about other evidence and police procedures related to the case so you can have a better understanding of what occurred based on what we know right now. The APD conducts very thorough criminal and use of force investigations, which typically require investigators to interview multiple witnesses, review hours of video footage, and analyze a significant amount of forensic evidence. We're still at the early stages of this investigation, which can often take several months to complete. Our understanding of the incident may change as the additional evidence is collected, analyzed, and reviewed. We do not draw any conclusions about whether the officers acted consistent with our policies and the law until all the facts are known and the investigation is complete. A word of caution, the images and video may be disturbing. When police officers use force to arrest a subject or defend against an attack, it can be graphic and difficult to watch. In addition, there may be strong language by those shown in the video. The 2 officers that fired their weapons that day are up here on the screen. Sergeant Francisco Hernandez, who was assigned to the Southeast Area Command, has been with the department since 2007. He has been involved in 1 prior officer-involved shooting, and he is back to duty. Officer Alex Cassiano has been with the department since 2019, and he was also assigned to the Southeast Area Command. He has no prior officer-involved shootings, and he is now back on duty. The person who was shot by police was 33-year-old Kevin Trujillo, a resident of Albuquerque. The incident we're here to talk about today happened in the Southeast Area Command. And it began on May 10th, 2023, when officers were dispatched to the 5400 block of Eastern Avenue Southeast in reference to a ShotSpotter activation. ShotSpotter alerted police that 6 rounds were fired about 7:36 p.m. in the area of Ross and Alvarado Drive Southeast. Sergeant Hernandez was dispatched at 7:38 p.m., so 2 minutes later, with Officer Castellano. Officers arrived in the area about 7:41 p.m., so 3 minutes after being dispatched. At the same time, a 911 caller also called in and said she heard approximately 5 to 6 shots fired rapidly nearby this same area. As officers were on scene of the original ShotSpotter activation, an additional ShotSpotter activation came in at 7:45 p.m. at the 1000 block of Palomas Drive Southeast. This activation alerted that 3 shots had been fired. At 7:46 p.m., comments on our call stated officers could hear additional rounds being fired in the area of Alvarado and Anderson Avenue Southwest. This intersection is 1 block south and 1 block east of the ShotSpotter activation. It's also about 2 blocks north of where Sergeant Hernandez and Officer Castellano were originally dispatched and currently at on the first call. These 2 activations of ShotSpotter were about 9 minutes apart. This is the on-body recording video of Officer Castellano. Approximately 29 seconds had passed from when Officer Castellano placed his patrol vehicle into park to when shots are fired. He does fire his weapon.
My man, come here, police department, come here. Show me your hands. Show me your hands. Oh shit! I'm fired. Oh shit! He's running southbound. Over here. Let's go. Police Department!
This is a still image from Officer Castellanos' recording device. You can see the subject, later on identified as Kevin Trujillo, appearing to manipulate something in his hands. A couple frames later, again, this is a still image from the video you just watched. You can see Mr. Trujillo turning his back and facing Officer Castellano as he continues to run away. Sergeant Hernandez was also recording during this incident. Here's his video.
Where's it coming from? My man! Come here, police department. Come here. Over your head! Back to the go! Stop fire, stop fire. One way! Stop fire, PD. Come that way, going that way.
This is a photograph taken of the alleyway the suspect ran down during the shooting. Several casings to firearm magazines and live ammunition inside of the magazine were recovered. Blood was also observed to be on the ground in this area. This is a photo of that same area, but now inside the alleyway and looking out. Again, several casings, magazines, and live ammunition were found, including blood. This is where we believe Mr. Trujillo was firing back at officers. This wall here was directly behind Sergeant Hernandez as he was being fired upon by Mr. Trujillo. This wall and home that were behind Sergeant Hernandez received at least 4 impacts. This is an example of one of the impacts that penetrated the cylinder block wall that was behind Sergeant Hernandez. And this is a close-up photo of one of the impacts into a home that again was behind Sergeant Hernandez as he was being fired upon. After shots were fired at 5700 Kathryn, Mr. Trujillo evaded officers by running away. While we're not sure of the exact path he fled, we do know that he arrived at his mother's residence nearby. She would later tell officers that her son, Kevin Trujillo, had come to her residence with a gunshot wound to his upper chest. She stated she thought he had 2 guns on him at the time. Kevin asked his mom if he could come inside, and she denied him access. She told officers her son is homeless, has schizophrenia, and believed people were recording him. At approximately 9:54 p.m., officers discovered Trujillo in this area, currently highlighted by the 3rd arrow, which was very close to his mother's residence. He was taken into custody without incident and was found to have a gunshot wound and was treated immediately. This photograph shows the area where we believe Trujillo had been hiding from officers after he had fired at us and after he had been shot. You could see some blood smears on the wall. And I'll show you another photo here in a second. There's a flashlight on the ground right next to those air conditioning units. The flashlight had damage consistent with being shot. This is the close-up of that flashlight that's on the ground. You can see the damage in the middle, and what we believe is a projectile is lodged in the middle of this flashlight. This is a residence next to the property where Mr. Trujillo was located. Behind the chain link fence you see on the left side of the photo is where a firearm was located. There was also blood located on that cylinder block wall and the trash cans. This is a photo showing where we recovered a firearm. There were 2 additional magazines just off to the right, all loaded with live ammunition. The firearm Kevin had in his possession was found to be stolen the day before during a nearby residential burglary, and at the time of this shooting was not connected to any other reported shootings. The burglary is still under investigation. The preliminary investigation is showing us that this gun is the same one that was used to fire at police based on the casings that were found back in the alleyway. Again, the person who was shot by police was 33-year-old Kevin Trujillo, a resident of Albuquerque. Kevin told officers, and they observed upon his arrest, that he had been shot. Kevin had a gunshot wound to his shoulder, and it does appear the bullet entered his back and exited out the front. The DA's office filed for pretrial detention, and a judge granted that motion, holding Trujillo in jail until trial. On May 26, a grand jury indicted Trujillo for aggravated assault on a peace officer, tampering with evidence, resisting arrest, and negligent use of a deadly weapon. He remains at MDC. Over the next several months, the Albuquerque Police Department will continue to investigate and analyze this incident. We will continue interviewing any new witnesses that come forward and complete any forensic test. After the investigation is complete, our Force Review Board will forward the findings to the Superintendent of Police Reform to determine if this incident met the high standards of the Albuquerque Police Department. The MATF will forward their case to the District Attorney's Office, who will make any determination of criminal charges. Any questions on this? Yes?
So with Trujillo, was he suspected to be the person initially firing those weapons that were called on by ShotSpotter, and were anyone injured during those the initial rounds of guns being fired?
I'll answer it in reverse. No one was injured outside of Mr. Trujillo receiving the wound. We do believe he was that shooter, and we're still testing more evidence to more positively confirm he did both those shootings.
What was the previous officer-involved shooting that Sergeant Hernandez was involved in?
I'd have to get that information, and I'm sure we can get it back to you. I don't have it right now, I'm sorry.
Can you just describe in as much detail as police know that moment that we saw when the officer ran into the alley and then is shot at pretty quickly? It was hard to tell who was shooting who, and do you know how the suspect was sitting when he fired at officers, or was he waiting?
At this point, we don't know exactly how he was postured, but he's definitely firing out through the alley, and that's where we believe those rounds are hitting the cylinder block wall and the house back where Sergeant Hernandez is starting to take that area. Yes?
That flashlight that had been shot, was that a flashlight that had been in the possession of one of the...
We're alleging that he had it on him at the time, and as he was hiding from police, he discarded it, and it likely took either a round from his own weapon or from our weapons, but we don't quite know yet.
Okay, but it was in his possession.
It was in the area where the blood is smeared, and we believe he left it. Again, he would eventually walk out to canine units and surrender to our commands. We just believe he was hiding there.
Is that blood that we saw on the side of that home, is that being tested to see if that is in fact his blood, where you guys found all of that?
Yeah, we will test that blood, but that can take longer than the timeline to get these briefings done for you guys.
And then can you tell me one more time, the gun that was found that you believe Trujillo was using was reported stolen, right?
Yes.
When was that reported stolen?
The day before.
The day before.
Yes, and it was just a residential burglary. Just a person came home, house broken into, gun gone.
Was that in the same area?
It was only a few miles away. General kind of part of town, yes. Yes.
Any of those bullet holes that we saw damage to the homes, did any of the bullets go into the home, or was it pretty surface level?
It looks like it caused damage, and we believe it actually landed on the ground outside of the home. So kind of maybe bounced off. And the cylinder block wall retained at least one of the projectiles.
How does, I know use of force is something that they talk a lot about with your, the deal with the DOJ right now, with DOJ oversight. How does having 3 officer-involved shootings in 1 month impact your relationship with the DOJ?
Let Chief handle
You know,
that.
the DOJ looks to see if we did a thorough review, if the use of force was within policy. And that's a great question, because a lot of people are confused and they think, oh, there's been 3 shootings, it must be bad for DOJ. Well, there's certain things DOJ looks for. Was the use of force appropriate? Was it authorized? Number 2, if it wasn't, did APD catch that? Number 3, did they hold the individual accountable? And like number 4, are we looking for trends and patterns to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future? So I know that people focus on the fact that we had this series of officer-involved shootings in the recent past, but let's not forget that from December, January, February, March, April, we had 0 officer-involved shootings. So there are just peaks and valleys of when we see incidents occur. We went a couple weeks without homicides, and this morning I read that everybody's freaking out because we had homicides this weekend. It's the same thing. There's peaks, there's valleys, and right now, obviously, we've seen a few more officer-involved shootings than we had for the previous 6 months.
And speaking of the shootings that we had this weekend, 3 dead at a house party, how are we, is there any talks about bringing back like the party patrol?
We've talked about that in the past. That's tied to resources. Of course, everybody knows I'm a big supporter of Party Patrol. It is a program that I was greatly involved with earlier in my career. But we also have limitations on resources. And one of the things I did ask for was for us to see if there was a call history or a call that Party Patrol would have gone out to prior to the shooting occurring, and there was no call. So just because we would have had Party Patrol doesn't mean that somebody would have called the police that this party was out of hand and that we would have gotten dispatched to it.
And we've seen a lot of teenagers with
We
guns
have.
getting hit with. What is your comment on that?
You know, years ago, we used to see individuals get in a fist fight, and rarely did somebody have a gun. There are more and more teens armed with firearms now than any other period that I've ever seen. And I don't think there's not one current officer who would say otherwise. Like, we've seen there's a lot of teens armed with guns, and we see simple parties and simple disputes turn into shootings because of the availability of firearms.
And speaking of that shooting, do you have any update on the triple homicide?
I have an update, and they told me I couldn't give the update yet. So no, we do have some information that we're working to verify. As soon as we get the information verified, we'll be releasing it out to the public. But we don't feel there is a threat to the community right now. So
Thank you, Marie.